Hello and welcome to another episode of the Trash Talk Podcast. I'm Mr. Dev Sergej. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing fine myself. And today, we're talking about unusual formats in media. Sounds a bit academic, but the idea is, hey, what if a book is not really a book in the traditional sense that we understand it? What if a video game goes beyond what we normally understand a video game to be? Right? If they break their media format in, usually in some intentional way. I mean, obviously, it's not about, this book broke in half because of external damage, and now it's not, no, of course. And we're gonna list some examples, and I'm gonna talk about them or whatever.
We haven't figured that out yet.
Listen, we never have figured out everything we want to say in a topic, and it always works. Sergej, you brought up the first example when we talked about this topic, or you brought this thing up to turn into a topic, I suppose. So how about you tell me what your first example is?
Sure. So I kind of sort of thought of this topic when I heard about House of Leaves, which is a book. I don't remember right offhand who the author is.
Yeah, me neither.
Probably should have
probably looked it up. Yeah. Although to be fair, it's not like we have credits for anything else. So this is one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, it's a novel, so we should probably credit the author. It is Mark Z. Danielewski.
Yes. While you're doing that, could you maybe actually pull up an image of how some of the pages look like? Because I don't think
maybe.
I think that will be very instrumental to showcase what we mean.
I'm gonna do a little bit of a.
Because the book is a bit unusual. It doesn't follow the common format of what books usually do, which is
the whole point of this topic.
Text.
I mean, it does,
which is contain text row by row.
Well, so first of all, I guess if we're looking for images, we get this, which is the cover. Not very insightful. This is a little odd from a text layout standpoint. I mean, I could put Sergej's face cam up there because there's no text down there in that corner anyways. Whoops. There. There's some text that's at a wrong angle, and there's a cutout here that has different text that doesn't directly relate, I believe, to the text around it. And yeah, there's that's the same page. This uses only half a page diagonally. Okay. I guess it has pictures in it as well? Okay.
I have no idea. But yeah, as you can see, it does some unusual things with text and formatting.
Yes, there's
and
also text.
Color. I've heard every single mention of house, as in the word house, is colored in blue for no reason.
Well, I mean, there is obviously narrative reason for it. Wait, is that okay? That's cool. Speaking of the house,
yes.
See, I think that probably gets the idea across.
And yeah, I've never seen something like this before, and now I'm very intrigued and interested to read this. I thought this is cool. Maybe we can turn this into a topic, and now we did.
Yeah, so House of Leaves is a great example of a book that, I mean, it still is a book in as far as it has, it has a cover, it has a spine, it has pages, but normally you would expect, as you said, right, the book to have text and lines. Occasionally you might have an image, you might have a header image as well, a head of some text. In some specific cases, if it's something educational especially, you might even have an image that's wrapped around by text. But generally speaking, there's a fairly linear nature to a book. And this book does kind of away with it. I mean, I suppose it still has pages in as far as I don't think you have to skip around that one, so there's still a little bit of linearity there, but on the page is not necessarily one specific linear way of reading it. I believe there's also multiple stories sort of layered on top of each other, effectively.
Yeah.
With different things.
From what I know, it's 3 stories, layered in one another.
Yeah.
So you are basically reading about a guy who found a book that he's reading, and he's annotating that book.
Yeah.
But he also sent his annotations to an editor, which is also annotating his annotations in the book. So you have like multiple layers of annotations and like story going on there. And it's like mostly pretty linear, but you also have like a whole like I forgot what it was, like something like a not quite a glossary, because that's like for like explaining individual words, but like side content at the end of the book. I forgot what the word was. Anyway, which is like optional to read.
Yeah. So
which, if you read it or not, can apparently change dramatically how you view the contents of the book and what is happening in there.
So yeah, that is definitely,
which is interesting,
like a fascinating concept, and we thought we'd talk about
mm-hmm.
other things that sort of fall in a similar vein. And I think one of the best fits that I came up with was a video game by the name of Doki Doki Literature Club. Some of you might have heard of it. It basically pretends to be more like a dating sim in the beginning, but it is actually a horror game, which, I mean, that in and of itself is like the bait and switch for the genre. But
the genre clash, yeah.
But it also, that's not in and of itself that special. What does make it special, I think, and fit in with this topic is that towards the end of the game, it actually like messes with the game files, and you can like edit the game files yourself or remove certain files to like try to like affect the game in like the ways that very much are designed as part of the game, right? It's not like, I mean, I guess you couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
You could mess around with any game's game files, although in most cases that will probably just break the game. But in this case, like that is like part of the playing experience, is doing things like that. As a matter of fact, some of the console ports then ended up having the file system built in as like a screen you can go to, because obviously you can't mess with the files of the console quite as easily as with a PC. But in some ways, it actually makes it like a more normal game, even though it is still the same concept, because at that point you're not leaving the game to make changes outside of it to then affect the game itself.
Yeah.
But I think there's also another example of where the game just structurally breaks with what a video game is to a degree, because you literally have to do things outside of the game to affect the game. And I think it's not, I mean, it's not, obviously it's not the same thing, but I think that kind of like goes in the same vein in terms of like as a formulated, right? Like
feels kind of similar.
Formats,
yeah.
Right, where like breaks a traditional format to give you a better experience. And I think in both cases, we can actually talk about how, we can actually mention that it probably advances the story, right? I think the story of Doki Doki Literature Club is more effective because it kind of like feels almost like there's more of a stake when you have to like actually go into the game files and like muck with it. It feels like Monica's actually taken over the game, right? Where,
yeah.
And House of Leaves, obviously, presumably, I mean, I haven't read it, but I've heard about it, and given how much people, like, how many good things people have to say about it, it stands to reason that the format is not just there, and it would have been just as effective linearly, like, with, like, just regular text, because if it was just effective that way, people would be annoyed by the format, right? So, it clearly also helps with sort of the story.
Yeah. Also has, like, the factor of, like, it being something, like, unusual and cool.
I mean, yes, gimmicks can be cool enough themselves, but obviously that if it could work without the gimmick, then oftentimes the gimmick just seems, well, believe it or not, gimmicky.
Probably.
Yeah. If you have another example, or if you want me to go.
I don't know, like, you've also, like, written down ARGs.
Yes, alternate reality games.
Yes, because they kind of just, like, do that, but it's expected, so it's, like, not so special anymore.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
It's a weird example, right? Because that what I said about Doki Doki Literature Club is almost like it's like that's the kind of thing where like, oh yeah, it is a game in a sense, right? I mean, not like as a video game, but like there is like usually you have like a website or like a video series or something that starts it, and then you have to also go elsewhere to continue it to a much greater degree. But at the same time, it is part of the conceit of an ARG that happens. So this is a strange example where the ARG medium isn't necessarily broken because it's basically impossible to break because of how flexible it is. But at the same time, it breaks through any individual medium that it would use.
Now I wonder, would it be possible to make an ARG that only uses one medium? And would it feel as out of place as like the other examples where they do break the medium?
I think people wouldn't call it an ARG if it was one medium, right? I think that is just because it's like I think people would probably like, because the only way I think you can have an ARG that doesn't break out of medium would be to just have it basically be a website, right? I think that's the only way you can do it to like even resemble an ARG, like a website with like a hidden part, and then there's like more and more hidden part as you dig deeper down into it. But I think that would still be seen more like a puzzle game or something like that, rather than necessarily a full-fledged ARG.
Yeah,
I do think the hopping is somewhat intentional. I mean, I guess you could. I think there have been ARGs that have been entirely on the web. So you have entirely. So it does take place entirely on websites, even if it's not just self-hosted ones. There's also maybe like a YouTube video or something. But so I guess to a degree you can say in a medium, but not like as strictly as something that isn't an ARG would.
Makes sense.
You mentioned, actually, when we talked about this, an interesting example that is also like a bit more borderline, choose your own adventure books.
Yeah.
You said they break what books are, in a sense, as well.
Because like what I imagine books are is like a pretty linear path, start to finish. And you just like read the words in sequential order.
Which
maybe you skip ahead because you don't like a section, but like that's about it. Maybe you reread a section because you like it so much or didn't catch something. But yeah, pretty linear. And choose your own adventure books kind of break that a lot.
It's another weird example because yes, they do break the format of books, but they're also or of novels, I suppose. But at the same time, they're literally almost a format in and of themselves. I guess kind of like the ARG, where like the ARG is not contained by a single format, yet it is a format in itself. And the Choose Your Own Adventure book is not contained in like the traditional book format. I mean, it is the form factor, but like, you know, it doesn't work like a regular book. And yet, it is its own formula to the point where no individual Choose Your Own Adventure book would be worth mentioning. Which I guess makes this another very interesting example of, like, I guess it also like showcases how like vague this topic is. But there are formats that are almost inherently like breaking another format, but are not necessarily like none of the. I guess the first Choose Your Own Adventure book would probably have been a great example, whichever that was way back when. But now it's just like a routine thing.
I guess if some format is broken often enough in the same or similar way, it ceases to be like a broken format and becomes a format of its own.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a great point, right? Because a format or a genre is kind of just created by like one thing first, and then it grows from there, right? I mean, there's a video game genre called roguelike, which are games that are like Rogue. I don't know if everyone knows this, but there used to be a video game called Rogue. And all of the core roguelike mechanics were in Rogue. Hence roguelike.
Yep. Similar thing with Metroidvania.
Yes, I mean, obviously Metroid and Castlevania
games that are like Metroid. Yeah.
So, yes, and I mean, obviously, Metroid and Castlevania are, I mean, I guess they're not platformers, strictly speaking, but they are like 2D side view, like, I guess they are platformers to a degree, but also like with combat. And then obviously backtracking is a key thing there, the Metroidvania format. But yeah, no, I mean, you do something, and it's done often enough, and it becomes its own thing. It's actually, I hadn't thought about that. I mean, it's somewhat obvious, but you don't really think about it, do you?
Yeah.
I've also put down as subpoints for Choose Your Own Adventure books, RPG books, and I'm not talking about like the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player's Handbook. I'm talking about like singular books that are like a full-fledged RPG that usually have like a character sheet in the back or something, and they usually are like sort of a hybrid between your D&D like tabletop role-playing game and a Choose Your Own Adventure book, where you might have, again, you have a character sheet, right, and you might need to have certain stats or a certain level to do certain actions. So it's almost like a little bit also like a game like Fallout, right, where certain dialogue options might be locked behind a certain skill level or something. And so those are also interesting because they are effectively like another spin on the Choose Your Own Adventure book with some extras. And the interesting thing there, I guess, that is beyond Choose Your Own Adventure books is that it almost has another format bleed into it, right? Which is the tabletop role-playing game. No, now the books are usually single player, but I think that is another thing.
Yep. But you also wrote down FPS books, as in first-person shooter books.
Yeah, so there were I believe at least two
and
books
that
made by the same publisher that are a two-player first-person shooter. I think you can also play the single player, but yeah.
Yeah, I have watched the video you sent me on this, and I'm still kind of confused and amazed that this exists and works.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great video by Questing Beast. Coincidentally, when I looked up Questing Beast's channel, it's literally his most popular video ever. So, it should be easy enough to find.
If not, could you perhaps maybe think of adding this little eye icon over there somewhere?
Yeah, I can, but it sucks. It used to be that you would click on it, and then it would just show a sidebar, and you could click on the video, but now it just takes it down to the description, and like someone in the description puts the thumbnail for the video, and then you can click on it. It's worse than it used to be. But yeah, no, I can try to remember doing that. Granted, I usually don't remember, but we'll see.
Guess you'll see.
Yeah, no, that was a.
Or well, you the viewers. Well, you've already seen if JJ remembered or not at this point.
Mm-hmm. So that was, I think, another fascinating genre break for me. And it's not even, and right, it's much like the RPG books, kind of combine a Choose Your Own Adventure with an RPG. This one combines a Choose Your Own Adventure with an FPS. I mean, Choose Your Own Adventure very loosely, but in the sense that, like, it tells you, like, if you do this, go to page that. So, yeah, that is fascinating to me as well. I mean, I did write down, just for completeness sake, I did write down TV episodes with unusual POVs. Those are really more ones that break the structure of their individual shows. There was a Supernatural episode from the perspective of the car, which is a cool gimmick, but that's about all that is. There was, I believe, a Without a Trace episode where they focused more on, like, someone who was close to the missing person. So, Without a Trace, crime show, follows the FBI, they're looking for missing people. And so, usually you follow the FBI agents. There was one episode where they followed inside the family of one of the people that was whose missing was investigated. I swear to God, that's a better way of wording that. Anyways, who was missing, right? And so it follows, like, those people and how their interactions with the FBI mostly, but always from their perspective. So when the agents leave, you don't know what they're doing, which is a really interesting way to, like, shake up an existing format. I think a lot of shows that, especially longer running ones, have done that sort of a thing where they shake it up somehow. It's probably the tamest thing we talked about today, but it is maybe worth mentioning. Anything you want to add? Because I have one more thing that I thought of earlier today.
I have nothing. So go for it.
There's another video game that I want to mention. Evoland.
Oh, right.
It's not really a format break in the same sense that DDLC is, but it is a bit meta in a way where it starts out like a black and white Legend of Zelda game. And then it starts becoming, it becomes in color, and then it turns 3D, and then they start adding mechanics to it. And it kind of almost goes through the history of RPGs in a single game with one continuous story. Evoland's actually really cool as well. And I think that, again, is another softer example for this, because they're not inherently breaking anything, but also you would never structure a game like that unless that is like the whole point. It does, again, feel a little bit like it fits with the other examples where, like, that is a very intentional choice. You wouldn't, like, randomly have the game, like, change whether it's in color or not, or, like, whether it's 2D or 3D, like, without there being a specific reason. I mean, in even tamer examples, I think there are some games that do switch between 2D and 3D as part of the gimmick as well, but, like, there's also, like, a key mechanic then. You would just randomly have to do that.
Yep. Actually, there's also another game called Outcore Desktop Adventure. It's actually free on Steam. You can get it. And it takes place, from what I've heard, entirely on your desktop.
Yeah, that's also unusual.
Yeah. Never seen that before.
So yeah, this is definitely not an exhaustive list, but yeah, no, it's definitely like an interesting thing to think about, right? Like the fact that there are all those things out there that really try to push what its format can be, that really like try to look at it with fresh eyes. I think that's a big part of this as well, right? Where like if you were to think of writing a book, most people wouldn't think to write House of Leaves. Like maybe now that House of Leaves is out and it has been very popular, but like your first thought is not, hey, let's really mess with the format of the book. And I do think there's something to be said about those people that do decide, like, hey, let's try to push what a book can be. Let's try to push what a game can be, right? Like, let's really, like, add another layer to this. And I think there's some, like, you have to have the right story to do that. You shouldn't do it for its own sake, but I do think there's something interesting there. Another interesting thing that I noticed when I was thinking about examples is that a lot of them tend to be horror. Which is most to say a lot of ARGs are horror themed to a degree, and DDLC is a horror game, and I think there's like that element of where like if the horror of it all seeps out of the game itself, it becomes more effective in a way. There was also like a horror RPG game, I don't know if Resident Evil or something like that, Silent Hill, like one of those kind of games, where I think. Wasn't that one? I think that one had the thing where one of the bosses could only be fought with a controller plugged into the second controller, so like player 2.
Oh,
position.
yes.
And I think there was also, it might have also one of those games, but one of those games where like, where the game suddenly talks to you using the name that like is set in your PC, like there's a system variable in your computer for the currently logged in user on their computer. And most games don't make use of that. So when a game does, you're like, how do you know my game? How do you know my name if the game didn't have you under it first, right? Like the game doesn't ask your name, and then all of a sudden it knows it. How does it know it? So I do know that there have been games that have used that as well. But I mean that's again like a smaller thing. But anything for like a horror effect, it does sometimes work if it feels like it's going beyond the game. I think those were all of my observations about this topic, okay?
I guess then let's move on to the facts of the week.
Go ahead.
Right, so my fact of the week is about why insects are or appear to be attracted to lights.
I believe I've heard of that before, yes.
Might have. Yes. So recently, there was like a new discovery of like why this actually is. There have been lots of theories before, but none were really like concrete and like had lots of counterexamples and counter evidence to them. But now a new one has appeared that like appears much, much more solid. And it's that insects use the light to orient themselves, to basically know where up and down is. Because they assume the brightest light source is the sun, and the sun is like either like on the horizon or above them. And they use that to orient themselves, like where basically to find out where up and down is. And lights kind of disturb that, especially at night. So when they see the light, they try to orient themselves that their up is towards the light. And so they naturally end up spiraling around the light.
Yeah.
Potentially getting trapped there in the cycle for like hours.
I had heard that recently, and it makes so much sense, right? Because I've always thought like that there was something off about the whole like attracted to light thing, because I was like, if they're attracted to light, why do they never like very rarely sit on the light bulb? Most of the time they're like circling around the lights. And that was a little bit weird to me. And I think this really does help explain that, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, no, they don't go towards the light necessarily. They just tend to get confused by it. Because I have definitely observed insects doing things that do not align with the idea that they are directly attracted to light. So yeah.
So, and in the study, the researchers also tested lights in like different orientations and different shapes of lights. And the one that like is the worst for the insects are lights that are like facing upwards.
I mean, yes, it stands to reason.
Because then that makes them flip around and like just like do like arcs around the lamp, never being really able to leave.
Oh, wait.
On downward facing lights,
it occurs to me that yeah, so go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It occurs to me that trying to fly upside down probably is difficult, because the aerodynamics of flight obviously would work differently because you're trying to fly against gravity. And so if you're upside down and you move the exact same way as if you were trying to fly up, you probably don't create the same kind of lift. You might actually, in fact, push yourself down more, which probably then fucks with the perception even more. Plus the fact, of course, that like the sun is basically stationary no matter how far you move, whereas obviously the position of the light changes, which is the main thing. But yeah, the upside down thing is interesting as well.
So yeah, that makes them just like flap around the light in like arcs, back and forth. Also constantly like hitting the ground or whatever is around the light. And it also makes it really hard for them to leave the light behind, unless they like walk away from it.
Yeah.
Because whenever they try to fly, they naturally try to orient themselves around the light, and that just makes them do another arc.
Yeah, that makes sense.
With lights hanging down, they can get pushed away by the wind, or like sometimes they appear to snap out of it and fly away for a second, which actually they manage to leave then, but yeah. It's still not great.
I wonder actually, as an additional thing, and you don't have to look this up, but I do wonder at what frame rate insects see. Because I wonder if the the actual electricity comes in at a certain frequency, which means that I think to a degree the lights might actually slightly flicker, which is actually a thing that you have to worry about for cameras, right? I mean, you know this. Where if your camera is not set to compensate for the power of your lights, then you can get these lines that are going across the screen, or across the image, I guess. And so I wonder if insects are affected by that, because there was a thing where I think dogs see at a quicker frame rate than humans, and so TVs flicker very heavily, older TVs especially, when you're at 30 FPS, they would actually flicker from perspective of a dog rather than just like showing one continuous image as we perceive it.
It's not necessarily about the like FPS, it's about persistence of vision. Because like whenever you flash a light on our eyes, it doesn't like disappear instantly. It like persists for a while.
Again, this is my fact of the week. It's just something I remember. It's vaguely correct, okay?
Yeah.
I think at least.
And like the bands of lights in cameras, whenever you don't compensate for the frequency correctly, is also like a combination of multiple different things that like compound to make those lines appear.
Yeah. Well, anyways, my fact of the week is about Apollo 12, the second mission to ever land on the moon. Well, manned mission to land. You know what I mean. Apollo 12. They put people on the moon again. And so there's actually an interesting tidbit that I found out today, and that is that the astronauts of Apollo 12 actually snuck a timer for their camera on board, with the intention being to take a timer selfie, because to confuse people of who could have possibly taken the picture. Problem is, they misplaced the timer and couldn't actually pull it off because they didn't know where it was. But I find this hilarious. I feel like every time you hear stories about astronauts, especially like on a lot of the older Apollo missions, well, on the Apollo missions, they're all not pretty new. Like, I feel like there's so much shenanigans going on. Like, I think I read another story not too long ago about like one of the astronauts like taking a sandwich into space or something. Like, I don't know. I feel like you don't think of the astronauts. You almost don't think of them as human beings to begin with, right? It's almost like just like they're these like historical figures or whatever, or like, you know. But they're just like regular people, and apparently a lot of them have a sense of humor. Which I always find some of the astronaut shenanigans very funny, especially because you often think again of the space missions as like very like no margin of error, right? Like very controlled environments and like scientific accuracy and all that stuff. And then, you know, there's just like people having a blast at the same time, and you don't really think of that. So this is another example of that.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, it's kind of sad that they forgot their time. On the other hand, I can just imagine, like, the, like, conspiracy theorists about, like, oh, the moon landing was faked. I mean, this is the second one, so, like, I guess if the first one was faked, then the next 3 or 4 over the next couple of years will probably also be fake, because otherwise, but it's like, how did someone take that picture? There were only supposed to be 2 people on the moon, and they're both in that picture. It's like, well, yes. Have you heard of a timer? But you know, I suppose it's good to not give them unnecessary ammunition, but we're playing the weekly Squirtle. Our starting words usually are tonic and laser, not in that order. I believe you start with laser normally.
I think so, yeah.
Almost certainly.
Like,
because we determined that
A and E are more common.
We determined the starting words based on the frequency of the letters. So these are, well, we thought they were the mathematically best starting words you could have possibly picked. However, we did later determine that our methodology for determining those was a little bit flawed, but it's still vaguely accurate.
Also, the words themselves aren't necessarily mathematically the best ones, even with our methodology.
Yeah, the letters within them.
We just determined the most common letters, and then like picked words arbitrarily.
Yes, that's a valid point. Well, although I believe we did initially pick a different word other than laser. I think it was URLs, which were literally the 5 most common letters in order. EARLS were the 5 most common letters in Squirtle answers. And URLs was unfortunate because I put the E, which is the most common letter, up in this corner, which gives us less information than if it's in this spot, for example, where it can also be in this spot then. And because these diagonals, this main diagonal, actually, I think the other one's technically the main diagonal. Anyways, the diagonal is only has one of each letter because that's where the row and the column intersect. Anyways, so we have a lot of hints, and in some cases we even have a lot of hints that are pointing in the correct direction, which is to say that we have 4 letters for the first column and
Yep.
4 letters for the second row.
Still a lot of letters.
It feels like it's trying to. I was gonna say it feels like it's trying to say ocean, but I might have flipped the O around. It's not. It's just not saying ocean.
Yes.
But there is a decent chance that this starts with S, because the first row also needs an S. Although they could be separate S's. I'm gonna say that right away. They could totally be separate S's. Well, and then we need to place. I mean, technically, if we were guessing this again, we could just make sure that we're like covering our bases with the S's. And just
Except
make it sales.
the E obviously cannot be there, possibly, ever. Because we've already tried there.
Yes, you're right, of course.
It's like the one spot where it couldn't be.
Now we don't have the anymore. Yeah, no, I'm making this worse. We don't have any other relevant information about the R or the E in the particular column. So, the S or the E, the L as well. The R is not in there. So, well, I mean, okay. My point still stands. We could have made it seals. As in he seals, or as in multiple seals. Actually, multiple seals might be spelled with double
Else?
E. What?
Sales? It's S-A-E, not S-E-A.
Right, yeah, no, you're right. Seals would be the other way around, wouldn't it? Apparently I'm terrible at this today.
I thought I was gonna be terrible. Like, I'm almost falling asleep here, but man.
I don't like this. I thought I was gonna like this because I mean, no, that puts us in a very similar position as well, AE, as you said, is probably not very likely, so E probably goes in the end, and then it does end in LE, or does it have an L there? What kind of consonants can we put before the E, or consonants or vowels? And that is in the question, right? Because if we, what would this letter then be? Right, and it's like solve, no, salve. Actually, salve would work, right?
Yeah, salve. Yeah, that would work.
Huh. Very interesting if correct. We don't have a lot of V's. Zalz, Zalp, Sald, Salf, Salge, Salk, Sals? With a C? Salb, Salm, Selm. Yeah, so that would be a possibility. The other question would be if we put the L where we couldn't have the V, what letters could be put then in that other spot? And the answer is, Sol, Sorrel, Sopal, no, Sodal, Soful, Sogul, Sokul, so Sail, with a Y, Saxel, Savil, Sable. We could put Sable, as in like Sable, right? Which I believe Sable, even in American English, might be spelled with L-E. I think it might be. Oh no, Saber is the one that is spelled with R in American English. Sable might still be wrong in American English, but I think it would be correct in British English. I'm not 100% certain. I like Salve. Let's just keep that there for now. But okay, and I said right. The N has to be in one of those two spots. The C probably wants to go there. Because, again, the column also needs a C. And, If you put
Pretty
a C
likely.
here, we'd have to put the N still in the last spot, and it would end in CN, which is maybe not impossible, but it doesn't sound very plausible. So I'm putting it down. And then the question is, do we put the O there or there? And the N there or there?
Acorn?
Acorn. I don't hate it. And then it looks like we might put an N there. Again, not necessarily, but statistically, like, seems like a good guess. We also need an E in this row, but that could obviously, I mean, if we're going by like intersection of hints, then obviously we're putting it like this. But that doesn't necessarily have to be how this
makes sense, yeah.
Okay, so what do we want to try for the central row or column?
We want to just like start with LON.
I mean, I guess it's
to test like both.
Yeah, I guess that would work. Yeah.
Guesses we have.
I mean, if we wanted to go really, if we wanted to like just really confirm things, then we could just go loner.
I don't know about that. That is like.
I know.
Too much repetition.
I know. A letter that I always like to try is U. I don't think it's that common, but I just like having all the vowels in there. I don't think that goes very well with what we typed so far. We also like testing some of the more common consonants. M, B, and D come to mind, I think.
Yep, G and H. Well, like the next couple letters in frequency are M, D, G, H, and P.
Well, I'm suspecting that lonum is not a word.
Lemon is.
I mean, yes, it abandons your idea.
I don't know how useful it is.
I mean, yes, lounges as well. I mean, I think it's too long, though. Yeah. That is lounge is too long. But yes, lemon would be a word that we could use. It doesn't test the O and the N where you want to test them.
Yeah.
And it still has the
also
E in
not
which you didn't want, but I placed it where it was actually more likely to be correct.
Yeah. Thing is, where it's more likely to be correct is also where it would give us less information.
Yes, there's always a balance to strike with this game.
Because in the second spot, it would actually give us a ton of information.
So you want to try lemon, is what you're saying?
I'm not sure. But I also don't want to stretch this out to infinity, so...
Fair enough.
Might as well.
Wow, that was fast. So, lemon gives us the L.
Double-click or something?
I don't think I did. Maybe my enter key's not properly debounced. I don't know. So, we got... There's still an N in that row and column, which is now almost certainly where we put it. There's still an O. Yeah, pretty much exactly where we thought it would be, probably. This one and this one are new. Yeah, so, wait, that one is new. That one actually, this one actually is pointing at an O in this row, which I think that hint is new. I don't like that. I think I prefer it there. Right? I mean, double O happens a lot.
Yep.
Which then puts the N either in the first position or in the second to last. Or both. The answer is going... I was going to say the answer is going to be noons, but it can't be noons because it can't be S.
Noonie.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. Intuitively, I'm thinking the second one is more likely. And oh yeah, this one has to be an N because the row needs an N. But no, actually, no, never mind. It doesn't have to be because it could be there where I put the O. There are still 2 spots where I can go. Any other letters that we still have to place that we haven't yet placed? Yeah, the I and the E for this one. E can't go there. Can't go there. It can and probably wants to go there, and it could maybe go there. I think I could go, well, anywhere except for there. I'm thinking maybe there. R. We have an R. This looks wrong. Right? That looks wrong. Okay, if the message is put there is correct. No guarantees. Then what does that tell us about what this letter can be? Because it needs to be able to go both after EN and between an N and an E. RN. So it would have to be a vowel. And it literally cannot be O, A, E, or I. So it would have to be U, basically. If RN is correct. So what is this word then? Earnwer, earns, earn you, earnp, earns. Almost sounds like a word with an S. It's legal. I don't think it's a word, but it sounds like it could be one. Earned, no, urge. Sounds a bit like urge, but not quite. Earnje, Ernke, Ernl, Ernie, Ernks, Earns, Ernv, Earn. Yeah, no, I think maybe I was a bit too quick with some of those letters.
While you're at it,
although that's
remove the U.
Also weird. What did you say?
While you're at it, also remove the U to not confuse ourselves later.
Fair enough. Because now this could start. If this is a vowel, then this could be TR or DR or GR or BR. Although that O is also weird. And that's the only other spot that the O can go besides the one I put it earlier. Now, granted, when I put it earlier, I didn't disprove as much as I... Well, not... I guess I could have just put the N there and kept the O. It's also the other option, right? Right, that actually would have probably been the better option, which then keeps... Well, this now has one. This never needed one. So that actually also satisfies the N hint. Well, not that other N hint, though, which is this one, which puts us right where we started, basically.
Except, the last O is not necessary there.
Yes. But it still runs into the same problem where we want to put a U there, and then we have this same word. Then.
Oh, yeah.
So that's not great. So I do.
But it makes it a bit less strict. Like the
it's
row.
less strict with the row, but I couldn't find a word with a column that is URN something E. And if there is no solution for that column, unless S or C were correct and I just didn't know it, then it's impossible for that configuration to be true. Now, admittedly, there are some layers of assumptions in there anyway, so none of this is as straightforward as I would like it to be sometimes. Oh yeah, this is not allowed to be. I was like, why can't this be O? But yeah, no. If this is O, then we get back into this situation which I don't love, but might be able to work with. This side of course can also be the I. And this could be a G. For lingo. Which, once again, I guess makes this a U. I'm coming back to that being a U. Right, this one can't be anything besides I or U in terms of vowels, but it could be a consonant like an S. Is there anything besides S that can go before a C? In terms of consonants? I don't think there is. And Psi... I mean, if I put an S there, I mean, obviously then this S is wrong, which makes Salve wrong, but, you know. Then... this doesn't lead to anything, does it? That is a word. I see her.
I guess it is.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I mean, I well, not the E was there already. I was gonna say, I mean, this is an R, which I guess means that this R doesn't have to go there. It could also go there. I'm not sure if that helps. Actually, the E could also go there, which I think I had it earlier, which gives us... well, okay, Salve doesn't have to be correct. Although, the E is a given, which does still not lock in the S. This could still be the S. Could still be false. Salve could be false, Sergej. As in, it could literally be false.
Yeah. I find that amusing.
The funny thing is, if it's false, then this could be sever, which would put a V back into the grid and also back in the row. Okay, what was I saying? Viver, Verer, Viser, Vepper, Viper? Viser, Veser, Vetter, Viter, Vedger? Vecker, Viker, Veller? No, it's not Latin anyways. Vexer.
Yeah.
Someone who vexes. Vetcher, Weber, Weber is one, but Weber I don't think is. Wiener. Someone who Veens to Venus. I believe to Venus with double E, not E and E. And it might be Wien. No, I think it's Wien. And then like to Wien off of something. Is it Wien? It might be Wien. Yeah. Okay, let me say something really ballsy. What if it is a vexer? Gives us an X and a V in the same word.
Very exotic.
I know. I mean, O and X is one hell of a letter combination as well. Boy, what do we put after an X? I guess X a consonant. I'm starting to think that the X is wrong. We could try with N. We could just try. Oh no, we could. You know what? I low-key. Okay. Can I try it with an N, see if it's a word, and then if it's not, try it with an X?
Sure.
Not a word, as I thought. That is a word, much like I thought. It's just, yeah. Okay, so I have good news and bad news. The first column might well be false. That's the good news. The bad news is the fourth row is not severed because we don't have any V's in this. Somewhat surprisingly, no V's in the grid. Sewer. It could be a W.
Oh.
I mean, not with everything else I've written down, but and those could be urges, actually, in fact. I mentioned urge earlier, but as something that it sounded like, but that was probably the E. So in fact, now that we have the E, we have to place an R. It can't go there. It could still go there. Okay, so it's not locked in. But it is in one of two spaces. And I think everything else was made up, right? Yeah. I mean, this W is not likely to stand. But I would love it. Also, the first row now needs an S now that I place it elsewhere. Which puts it there?
That makes sense, yeah.
Snore is by the way. Nothing else that we need, nothing else that we need there. Huh. That means that this could be anything.
Didn't you say it could be false?
Oh yeah, I did say it could be false. Yes. Oh no, I do actually now have reason to assume all of those letters. I have plausible reasons for why those might be the letters. So okay. So virus. That sounds like virus. It could be vowels, right? That's not a word. Physus, Fidus.
I'm more concerned about the column, the central column.
I mean, yeah, the W is likely wrong.
Yeah.
I just mostly put that because it would be possible, and I kind of like the idea of having a W in the middle there. Ficus, isn't that a tree or something?
Could be.
I guess it makes this a race because we do need an A somewhere in the grid. We have an A in the grid, but anyways, could be a race, and that could be conga. I think it's a dance. A conga line, yeah, like a conga line. Now Seeger, I'm not so confident on, but could be.
So
I think Seeger's last name.
If we assume this is correct. Okay. Assuming something is incorrect in this grid, which word will give us more information if it turns out to be incorrect?
Well, the N and the O need to both be placed still. The R would also need to be placed, but the E in erase is fixed, so that doesn't help us. The R in erase would need to be placed somewhere in that row. The snore needs to place an N in the column and in the row that it's in, and an O in the row that it's in. Yeah, no, snore definitely gives us more. And might also be more likely to be correct. Actually, maybe less likely. I don't know. So I'm going snore, is what you're saying. That was correct, and gives us a redundant R to the top there. It gives us
Rose.
a not entirely redundant C hint there. Oh, right. It's a road, then, I guess. And urged. That's fine. That's a small adjustment. And it's good that you pointed it out, though, because I would have almost not noticed. I was looking so much at what new hints we'd gotten. Well, that this needs an S, and now the S can no longer be at the bottom, which it couldn't be anyways because there was the E there. So I guess we keep going columns then. And we just hope that's all right. Icier, this is one I've run of the spicier ones. And we have, what did I say, Congo, as in the country? No. Well, we already have the third letter for urged. So that
is a great observation.
Non-zero chance that we can still get this with a single guess. That is assuming that a word that starts with UR, ends with D, and has the third letter that we need there, does exist. We don't need to put the E there, so we have a little bit of flexibility. To be fair, I did put the Congo, the G I put there when I thought it was Conga still. But Congo apparently is also a legal word, so it wasn't that off base. Convo, and then sever again. Convo short for conversation.
V is not in the group.
Oh, right. It would have been so fun if there was a V after all. But yeah, you're right. Conwo, conro, conto, conzo, conpo, conzo, condo, condo. Cedar, condo. Like a condominium. Condo. Cedar. Confo?
Someone who uses the command line utility called Z.
So what did you say?
I'm just joking about Cedar.
Oh, okay. Conco? Conyo? Conbo? Cono. I don't know what cedar or cedar would mean, but it still seems like the best bet. Which would make us wanting to guess something like this. Or this. Or this. Or this. Or this. No. Okay, that was a stretch. I'll admit it. Do we want to just try out SEDER then first? Just to see if that is even a word? And then finish the puzzle after that. That is a word, and that is correct. Which gives us urged. And there we go. Okay.
Perfect.
As always, I solved a possible grid, and then ended up having a couple of mistakes in there. That's perfectly normal. That's how I always do this. We got there in the end. It was ficus, which I believe is a type of plant. Acorn, lingo, Cedar Road, False, funny, Icier, Condo, Urged, and Snore. Obviously, that means I have to Google define Seder, and please give me a pronunciation while we're at it. A ceremonial meal held on the first night or two of Passover. One of the 54 parts into which the Torah is divided. Okay, so I guess the takeaway is I'm just not Jewish. Passover is a Jewish thing, was that a Christian thing? Jewish home or community service, including a ceremonial dinner held on first and second evenings of Passover. Yeah, so I'm perfectly, and it's
Seder.
Seder.
Either.
Okay.
All right.
And then I'm gonna just do a quick ficus image search. Just yeah, it's a tree. Well, it's like a small shrub, I guess, more like. But yeah, no, it's a tree. It's a houseplant. It's fine.
Wait. What did you search?
Ficus. Ficus.
Oh yeah.
It's a plant. That's what I said. I roughly know what it was. Like, in the last moment,
Yes.
I doubted myself if it was actually a tree or if it was more like a fern, but it is more like a tree. So I was right, actually, when I said tree.
I have heard this name before. Yes.
Yeah, that's... which brings us to our second topic. Good questions to ask from ConversationStartersWorld.com. Starting with the 119. What actor or actress can't play a different character because they played their most famous character too well? I think the only correct answer here is no one if they're good enough. Because even if I recognize the actor and I recognize them from playing a specific character, if they're good enough at playing their new character, you will forget about it. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
a good performance can immerse you into the content to a degree where, like, whatever they're trying to argue just doesn't hold true. I do think it's more difficult if you are, like, very famously associated with a specific character. I don't think it's impossible. I think that it's, like, if you're good enough of an actor and if you are famous for playing a specific character well, then presumably you can play another character well as well.
Still can feel a bit weird though.
Yes, I think it
At
does
least
also
at
matter.
first.
Yeah, and I think it also matters a little bit, A, how well they play the character, and B, how different they are. Because if you, like, change things about your appearance, for example, so that you don't really look like the character you previously played, right? Like, you get a different haircut, you dye your hair, maybe even, you know, you make up differently, whatever. Like, you can look a bit different, and then I think also then disassociates them a bit more easily. Where's your go-to restaurant for amazing food? I don't think I have one at the moment.
Don't think I have either.
I think we have a Chinese place nearby that is pretty good. The cool thing being that they deliver. Which, I mean, I guess people associate Chinese with takeout anyways, but yeah, so there's some Chinese takeout that I like to occasionally order. There's a pizzeria nearby that also... I think there are a couple of pizzerias nearby that I like. I think there's one that I do particularly enjoy, but it's all a matter of degrees. I don't think there's like one that really like stands out individually. And again, most of the places that I like are ones that you can order from and they deliver. Because I don't really go to restaurants all that much. There's a pretty nice burger place in the city that... Actually, there's two very similar nice burger places in the city.
Yeah. Very close together as well.
Yeah, and I have yet to actually directly compare the prices because they're definitely... Like, the quality is pretty much identical, from what I can tell. So... and I think the prices are pretty similar as well. So I think it's just like which one you're closer to. Which, you know, walkable city, so that actually does make a difference. Although they're not that far apart. If you really wanted to go from one to the other, you totally could.
Like less than 5 minutes on foot.
Yeah, It's just if
They're like
they are
right
basically
across.
equal in quality and in price, you might as well go to the
Yes.
closer one.
True. Although like one has like I think a slightly better location, has like more space, but that's like minor details.
Oh, you mean like within the building?
Yeah, within the building. Although that one does not have like space outside, so you have to eat inside.
Yeah. No, because when you
If I
say
remember
location,
correctly.
I thought you meant like, oh, one of them is like more centrally located, so it's easier to get to from more places. Or
Oh,
something.
not really. No, like it has more space inside, but no space outside. The other one, the exact opposite, has less space inside but more space outside.
Okay,
So.
fair enough. Yeah. So I mean, there are a couple places I can think of that are like, but I mean, first of all, I'm obviously like not like a fine dining kind of person to begin with, right? So like, all of these are solid places that still have affordable food, not like fast food levels, but like still like like you're not gonna go bankrupt from going there once, kind of. You will go bankrupt if you try to eat every meal there, but
or if you try to go eat like every day.
Actually, speaking of not going bankrupt, I should probably give a shout out. But I say shout out. I'm not going to go to specifics, but my university's cafeteria is actually also really good. And if you're a student, the meals are like dirt cheap. Like you almost couldn't cook for yourself at that price. Like they're really cheap.
That stuff is amazing. As in, like that they offer it, not that I've tried the food.
Yeah.
Sadly, I would like to. I haven't. But for me, like when I lived in Germany, still, there was a Greek restaurant, fast food kind of place. Was like extremely good.
Okay. Yeah.
They didn't like serve anything special, but like the quality of the stuff they served was like really, really good.
I'm trying to think, but I don't think I know any restaurants or offhand that like do serve anything particularly special. I mean, obviously, like pizzerias will have like pizza and lasagna and that sort of stuff, and then like the Chinese places will have Chinese food. But like broadly speaking, I don't think there's any restaurants that I can think of that have anything special outside of their like defined niche. But at the same time, it is usually just about quality, right? Like I was thinking about a couple of pizzerias, and I can probably tell you which one of those makes the best pizza, which is like kind of what I go there for.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what the best Chinese food in the area is, but again, right, there's like one place that delivers, and they're solid. So that's good enough for me.
The only annoying part about that one is that they don't deliver, and for a long time they only open like in the evening.
Oh yeah, opening times are also like a thing for like restaurants where some don't open in the some aren't open in the afternoon, and then a lot of them are closed on Mondays. I was happy when they closed on Tuesdays because not just because it's inherently better, but because most other ones are closed on Mondays. So if they close on Tuesday instead, it's like okay, now I have selections for both days.
I think they close on Thursdays, if I remember correctly.
Okay. I mean, there's a kebab place nearby that
Which,
I think
like,
doesn't close
even
at all.
fewer do.
So yeah. Oh yeah, there's actually the
I
kebab
don't
place
think
nearby.
that's allowed in Germany.
I'm not sure. I don't think they have a day off. It doesn't really matter. Also, you can tell if a restaurant makes their money mostly from workers if they are closed on weekends, because that's normally when they make the most money. But some places are like the dedicated pickup places or delivery places for companies. Like they'll always order there, and so if they have a lot of that kind of traffic, then they might actually be closed on the weekend because they actually make most of their money on the weekdays when it's like big corporate orders. It's an interesting tidbit. What's something that all your friends agree on? I mean, not to be that guy, but like, first of all, define friends, please. But I mean, I was gonna say something obvious like, the Earth is round, but then again, I have a certain, let's say, acquaintance who might be 100% certain of that. So, like, I don't know.
Ah, um, it's hard to think of something, right? So mm, like there are a lot of things that most of my friends agree on, or like
All
for
right,
all
like again, right?
yeah,
I wanted to be
all
funny and just say something very obvious, like the Earth is round. It's like, I'm not 100% confident that there isn't that one guy who might say something different. Right, and then it's like the thing where like the sky is blue. It's like, well, I'm sure you'll tell me that actually it's about the refraction of the light. It's like, right, like consensus,
yeah.
right? Like, and honestly, the fact that there probably isn't something I'm coming up with immediately is probably a good thing. I feel like you don't want to just be among purely like-minded people. I do think that most of my friends are like broadly similar in some senses, but I think there is always some difference, and it's probably not bad.
Like never something that all agree on.
Yeah, I mean there probably is, but there's not anything I can immediately think of. What's your best story from a wedding?
I was about to say I've never been on a wedding, but I have been once as like a kid.
I have
I
been.
don't remember much.
Well, I think I might have been to a wedding or two as a smaller child, but I have been to two weddings not that long ago, the last couple of years. And honestly, pretty boring. Like, nothing to say. I've been to two of
Doesn't
my
surprise me.
cousins' weddings recently, and both times there was not much going on. What languages do you wish you could speak?
I mean, pretty obvious. Japanese would be pretty cool.
I thought you were going to say Swedish.
Swedish right now as well.
I thought the obvious one for you was going to be Swedish. But fair enough. It's more obvious that you're a weeb than that you currently live in Sweden. I'll take it.
I mean, Swedish, I can learn Swedish relatively fast if I actually put effort into it.
Yeah, fair enough.
And like I can already like read a lot of stuff.
Yeah, also
and
fair
understand
enough.
it. So it's not that high priority.
I guess the next
like Japanese?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's like very different. It's
yes.
fun to learn, but it takes a lot of time.
I mean, just like when you mentioned like you can already read Swedish decently well, it's like, oh yeah. And then you have Japanese with like the whole, I don't know why I like try to simulate drawing a kanji. Like that's no. But like, kanji, right? Like that's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Like who thought that was a good idea? And the worst part is they don't really need them. I mean, yes, they do sort of need them, but like you can literally write the entire language in hiragana.
Yeah.
I know that there's like some subtlety that gets lost that way because of homophones and like I think ones that are like just stressfully or whatever. But like, it's fine. It probably works most of the time with context.
I mean, yeah, but it also like I think will feel like reading English using the IPA.
Well, but the IPA, I think the IPA genuinely has more
doable,
characters than
but
hiragana.
it's super weird.
I mean, yes, but the thing is, right? It's not like Chinese, where like their one and only script is Chinese characters, right? Hansa, which are also known as kanji. But like Japanese has other scripts. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not really my problem, not my language. But I guess the next one for me would be Russian that I'm currently trying to learn. I think the problem with this question is, it is. I feel like, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I feel like this is like, oh, if you just could, what language do you wish you could speak? It's like, you can learn literally any language if you put your mind to it. Granted, I get it, right?
Yeah.
Like, sticking with it, tricky. I have problems with that myself at the moment. But you can learn it, right? I'm not going to say my French is excellent, but my French is mostly self-taught, and I can understand some stuff. Okay, I'm intentionally not trying to oversell it, but like simple videos, I can usually understand, right? Like, and I'm talking about mostly ones that are intended for native speakers. So, like, I'm okay. And now I'm learning Russian, and I haven't been very okay in terms of actually keeping up with it. But, like, the Russian script is actually trivial. Like, I know people are often put off if a language has a different script, and with Chinese characters, that's very justified. Yeah. With pretty much everything else, it isn't. Because if it's an alphabet, or an abogida, or a syllabary, or whatever, like, if it isn't basically Chinese or hieroglyphics, then it's not that hard to learn. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where I think it's actually not that hard to learn. You do have to stick with it, and it does take a while, but it's not really necessarily that hard, and it doesn't take that much investment. In terms of time investment, I mean, money investment doesn't take any. There are enough free resources for most languages out there. That doesn't necessarily mean that the best resources, and there's probably a bit of a trade-off in, like, in terms of money and time, where if you pay for resources, you might not need as much time, depending on what resources, and it's not categorically better to pay. But I do think it's worth mentioning that the wish you could speak thing, like, almost sounds too aspirational in a sense where, like if you just do it, you'll probably be able to speak it at the basic level in a year or two. For a first-time language learner, let's say 2. In 2 years, you can easily learn a new language, at least to like low intermediate level. And the more languages you know, and the more similar language is to one that you already speak, the more you're going to achieve in that time. And obviously, the more time you put in on a daily basis as well. But, or on a weekly basis or whatever. I mean, technically, you should probably try to aim for daily, even if it's not a lot, just for like the rhythm of it all and like the forgetting curve stuff. But in theory, even once a week would work, but you would have to put in more time, and it's diminishing returns a little bit. So yeah, what language do I want to learn? The next one is Russian for me. After that, it's probably going to be Spanish. And after that, probably Arabic or Mandarin. Most likely Arabic first and then Mandarin. And after that, I don't know. I say as if, but it's going to take a while. And the whole thing of, learning all of those by the time I'm 30 is not going to happen. But, I'm not that far behind, right? I think at the current, if I restarted Russian right now at, a regular pace, I think 33 would still be very reasonable. Would just say in 8 years. But,
be pretty cool.
So, that's that. I mean, I suppose...
Would be a great achievement.
There's some, maybes that I thought about learning, right? What is it? That conlang, the big one.
Esperanto?
Esperanto. I was blanking on it for some reason. Yeah, Esperanto is one that's probably,
Yeah.
It probably would have made sense to learn it earlier, but also it seems less useful, concretely speaking, than the other ones I've named. So I was thinking about Esperanto, but I would probably do it after all the other ones that I've already talked about. I was also thinking about maybe learning Hindi or Swahili or something, which languages that are also spoken by large amounts of people, even if they're not necessarily as international in that sense, where the 6 languages that 4 languages that I talked about, plus 2 other ones that I already speak, are the 6 languages of the UN. It's a little bit arbitrary, but it seemed like a decent starting point. Also, Spanish and Mandarin have huge amounts of speakers. Arabic as well, although Arabic's not does not equal Arabic, so that's a bit more complicated as well. Russian is probably actually the smallest of those 4, but it is still spoken in plenty of ex-Soviet countries, not just in Russia. So it will be probably very useful in the Baltics. Belarus, Ukraine, Georgia, Albania, all of those kind of countries.
And not even just that, if you know Russian, lots of words are very similar to other languages that aren't
yeah,
that aren't necessarily Slavic.
Oh, Okay.
but still have like lots of words like that are similar.
Because
I forgot what the correct term for that is.
Cognates.
Cognates, yes.
Yeah, because I was thinking, like, obviously, if you understand Russian, you probably can do decently well with Ukrainian and Belarusian. But, like, those are the two most closely related to Russian linguistically. Then other Slavic languages, right? I mean, there's a ton, right? Like Polish, Macedonian, or like, I mean, yeah, Serbian, Croat. I mean, basically the same language. Those two. But, yeah, right? Like, those are just from the top of my head. But, yeah, so, I mean, Russian is still useful as both in that there are a lot of speakers, and it's also a Slavic language, which, I don't want to be that guy. I mean, both for practical reasons, I mean, mostly for practical reasons, but also for, like, it feels almost like cheating, where it's like, oh yeah, let's just go ahead and learn, French, Spanish, and Italian, and then maybe Dutch while I'm at it because I'm a German speaker. It's like, yeah, I could learn a bunch of Germanic and Romance languages, but if I then said I speak X amount of languages, and they're from two families, it would kind of feel like cheating. Like, it would kind of feel like I'm inflating it, even if I'm not.
Yeah.
And also, B, it's just not that practical. Because if I know French, like, if I see written text in another Romance language, chances are I can decipher at least some of it. Granted, not as much as I thought. And obviously, spoken languages differ even more. But there's still a little bit there. Right? And I can already mostly read Dutch. Because, frankly, if you can speak German and English, it's not necessarily trivial in the sense that you could just, like, read it like any German text, but it's fairly doable.
Yeah.
And so, just from a practicality standpoint, right? Like, I mean, even just being able to read Cyrillic is already, like, actually quite the boon, because, like, sometimes you sound out a word, turns out you actually know it, right? Because some words are actually cognates between Russian and other languages, as Sergej said earlier.
Yes.
And so, knowing, right, a Slavic language, and then, I mean, Spanish, again, is just very widely spoken and is a lot more similar to, say, for example, Italian and Portuguese than French would be, so it actually that does also give you more leverage in that sense. So it doesn't really make sense to learn Spanish. If you had to choose between learning Spanish and French, you should probably choose Spanish. The reason why I chose Spanish is both because I technically had a little bit of French from school, and I actually had some memories. So anyways, right, and then Arabic, again, huge amount of speakers. It's a Semitic language. It's another language group, although I think the only other Semitic language that has, like, a decent amount of speakers is probably Hebrew. And I don't know how similar they are. I don't even know if Mandarin has a lot of related languages, but it's obviously the most spoken language in the second most populous country in the world. It's the most common mother tongue. And it's also the official language of Taiwan. I mean, the last bit is... I mean, China's technically, like, the bigger factor, but realistically, I'm more likely to end up in Taiwan than in China. For, like, purely political reasons. Like, I don't know about going to China these days. That seems a bit sketch. Like, going to Taiwan is, like, perfectly fine.
It does, yeah.
So anyways, yeah, it does actually make sense to pick those languages. And then, yeah, I'm right, as I was saying, right, Esperanto is probably... I'm right at city levels, yeah.
For me, I am currently planning on, like, learning Swedish. If I actually stay in Sweden, yes. If I don't, then I will likely abandon it. And, like, no matter what, like, if I abandon it or continue with Swedish and learn it, I think my next language will be Spanish that I want to learn. Because that, like you said, like, unlocks a huge chunk of people that I can talk with suddenly.
Yeah, I mean, South America is basically all there. I mean, yes, Brazil speaks Portuguese, and is, like, the single biggest country there. It's also, like, it's kind of close.
It's, like, almost the same.
I mean, realistically, it's not like it's the same, but I think if you were, like, if you spoke Spanish to a decently good level, and you were just dropped in the middle of Brazil, I think you could make do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That also combines with the fact that, like, I did interact a lot with Spanish speakers, not anymore quite as often, but still occasionally. and that would like actually help me out.
Yeah, I mean,
with like communication, because they not always are able to speak English.
Yeah, that's actually, weirdly enough, that's a factor for me. I've never really had much of a practical reason to learn French. And usually they say, like, you need to have a reason to motivate you. And, like, it worked fine for me without really having, like, a concrete, like, reason or goal. I don't know any French speakers. Well, actually, I do, vaguely. But technically, there are some family friends that speak French. But I've met them, like, once after I'd already learned French. And also they speak fluent German. So, like...
Yeah.
It's kind of redundant.
Fun thing is, for me, like, I actually know more French-speaking people than I know Spanish-speaking people.
Oh. And, right, I personally know, like, what, one Russian speaker? And we never speak Russian, right? I mean, we barely ever speak German.
True.
So... You know,
the only time we speak German is like when we play D&D.
I mean, it's basically whenever there's other people involved, which usually is when we play D&D these days. Yeah, and so no, I don't need to learn Russian to talk with Sergej, right? Like, so you know, and
yeah,
I don't know anyone who speaks any of the other languages that I mentioned. I think, but you know, it just seems like good languages to learn.
Also, like on the learning resources side of things, there are like books specifically made to be like easy to learn. I've got one right here. It's like for German speakers that want to learn Swedish, that uses lots of cognates.
So it's like a great reader.
And what?
It's a great reader. A graded reader. I feel like I'm swallowing my words.
Yeah, basically. It teaches you like vocab, like over time, introduce you to new vocab, explains it, also explains the culture of the country of the target language. When there's like a big difference, stuff like that, and I think that's pretty cool. There's by this Verlag. What's Verlag? Publisher, yes. Publisher. There's books for more languages. In this case, also Russian. They have like 4 books. Russian might be interesting for you. And I'm pretty sure there's like similar books for like English speakers to learn languages.
That's actually a very important point. It's very easy to find language learning resources for most languages, at least for like most of the more common spoken languages, if you already speak English. I think English is like the most important language for anyone to learn. I mean, obviously, if you're watching this, you probably speak English. Otherwise, I don't have anything to say, right? Because if you don't understand, then you don't understand.
Subtitles, I guess.
Oh yeah, auto-generated subtitles, machine translated. What could possibly go wrong? I mean, it works. I don't know if it's enabled. I think auto-generated subtitles don't work on every video on YouTube. I don't know why. I think I have them turned on, and I think that's all that you need to do. I don't know about the auto-translation thing. That being said, again, right, like if you're actually watching this with machine-generated, automatically translated subtitles, then woof. I wonder if it still makes sense what we're saying. And yeah, I think
like my experience was actually pretty decent with like automatic subtitles and machine translated. Like usually that is actually fine.
The automatic subtitles these days are pretty good, and machine translation generally also has gotten a lot better. So it might be fine these days. It used to be that the automatic subtitles in YouTube were hilarious. And yes. I still, like, even to this day, I still, sometimes when I do it, I mean, I usually turn them only on if I don't understand something, and I'm like, what did he say? And it's like 2 or 3 times you can't hear it, and you like turn on subtitles. And oftentimes they're not quite right then either, which makes sense because the less clear you speak, the more likely it is to fuck up. So, let's do one more question and then call it a day. Sure. What's the most pleasant sounding accent? I'm assuming in English, because obviously that also differs a bit, but I feel like I actually enjoy a lot of accents. Mostly native ones, interesting enough, so native dialects mostly. they tend to not like foreign accents as much as a lot of native speakers do. Like, some native speakers will just, like, be enamored by any foreign accent, basically. Probably not by the German one. That was terrible. But, you know, I don't particularly... I don't know, like, I find it weird when people speaking English have, like, strong foreign accents. Like, you know, I get it, right? It's, like, it's not trivial to not have an accent, but, I often find those more off-putting. But I actually like a lot of the native English-speaking accents. I think British accents, especially English ones, used to be something that I didn't like particularly much. But I do like certain English accents these days.
Yeah.
Like the Scottish and Irish ones, like if they're too strong, it's hard to understand. But I do kind of like them as well. Also, like Australia and New Zealand have very pleasant to listen to accents, I would find. And the US also has plenty of cool accents, right? I do actually, I mean, I think in terms of American accents, I think the most pleasant one is probably like the folksy Southern one. But
I can get behind that, yeah.
But I mean, also you still at the same time, like the like neutral American accent is also like not necessarily the most pleasant or most appealing, but I think is the most straightforward and like is in my mind sort of like the generic North American English sort of the default for me in my mind. It's probably fairly close to how I speak, or at least that's usually what I'm more or less going for. I'm not entirely neutral, but it's fairly neutral. You know, like when I'm talking about a neutral accent for a country, I'm usually talking the way that TV presenters speak, right? Like that's usually the giveaway. But yeah, I think I talk about just about every accent, and I don't think I said a bad thing about any one of them. And I think that's sort of on purpose. No, I don't know. I sometimes like hearing different accents. I think it's kind of cool to hear different accents occasionally, and I don't think the ones that seem cooler would probably be less cool if you heard them all the time.
Probably, yeah. And I do agree like with most of what you're saying, except that like I do also like foreign accents.
Okay.
In English, yeah. I actually quite enjoy them as long as I'm able to understand what they're saying.
I don't know why I'm so weird about that, but for some reason, like, foreign accents usually not that great for me. I think it also depends a little bit, of course, on how strong they are. The more understandable they are, the better, but I don't know. I do think I'm just being weird about that, but that is just how I feel, you know?
Yeah. I actually have, like, this weird thing where, like, if the accent is strong, I like it more than if it's, like, just, like, somewhat there. If it's very light, then I also find this good. But if it's like somewhere in between, that's where I like the foreign accents the least.
Oh, yeah, what I also find fun,
I don't know why.
Find fun in terms of foreign accents is whenever you have people that both have a foreign accent and a regional accent. That's always kind of fun. When like that happens if you have like a region which has like a very particular accent. It's like if you have someone immigrating to Scotland, for example, right? And so like they speak with a Scottish accent, but also with a bit of an accent from where they originally come from. Like that sort of a thing where like it's always kind of fun when you can hear. I think I heard it recently where there was someone who was I think from like the north of England, but originally from like Eastern Europe, and they had like a sort of like a Russian sort of accent. I don't know if it was specifically Russian, and also had like a very much like a whatever the regional accent in like Northern England was. And it's kind of weird to hear like a combination of those two accents because you don't hear that often. I think it's kind of fun, but again, I think it's mostly the novelty of it. But yeah, that kind of thing is also fun.
Sounds very interesting.
And you know, it's the same thing when I don't know if I've heard that much in German. I do find it very interesting oftentimes. At the risk of sounding racist, but when people that don't really look German, which is say not white, speak with like a Bavarian accent or something like that, but it's like a very like regional accent, it always feels a bit weird when you like, you know, nothing wrong with that. It just,
yeah,
you know, a black guy with a Bavarian accent is just kind of a weird thing. I don't make the rules. I don't think I've heard like a specific combination of where it sounded like they had both like a foreign accent and a regional one within the country. But those things, generally speaking, are always kind of fun as well. But I think I've only The only examples I can think of were in English.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't happen too often.
Yeah, because again, right, those are usually people that like move somewhere as adults, learned the language fairly well, but still maintain a bit of an accent, and then also learned it in the region, so they have that regional dialect. It's just a fun combination, but it does happen, and because any individual combination of that's pretty rare, it's like always a fun thing where it's like, oh, I've never heard that combination of accents before.
Yeah.
I also do like the Mid-Atlantic accent, but that's like a bit outdated of a reference.
Oh, which accent?
The Mid-Atlantic accent. It's a hybrid between English and American accents, and that was specifically used in like a lot of older film, for example. I think there were certain film schools that were specifically teaching it to actors. So there were a lot of older actors that speak that way. It's not really relevant these days, but like a lot of older American actors would then speak like it sounds vaguely British, but it also still sounds vaguely American. So that's just kind of a fun one as well. I think in part of because of the association, where it's like it's a bit old timey, even though no normal person actually spoke like that back in the day, but it does kind of have that old timey feel to it. Again, like no one
quite sure what to like
life.
imagine there. Yeah.
Anyways, let's move on to our songs. We gotta have something to add.
Not really, no.
What is your song of the week?
So my song of the week is 1,000 Eyes by Miracle of Sound.
I kind of like the sound of that. It's hard for me to judge. It feels like the kind of thing that I would have to hear in full to really fully judge. But I do like what I hear.
I kind of thought so.
Anything you want to say about that?
The
song that is?
Recently discovered this band, and recently, I actually do mean recently, for once, like a couple days ago. Have so far heard a couple songs of them, and I like all of them. This one apparently is about Bloodborne.
Oh yeah, I guess.
Didn't know that when I first listened to it, but makes sense. Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, my song of the week is The Winter Stars. Is it just Winter Stars? I don't know if there's an article there. Anyways, by Sabaton. Yeah, the segment was a little bit shorter than they usually are, for a very simple reason. I once used this in a top 10 songs I discovered in a year list, back when we did those. And so I still have the clip lying around. It's a bit shorter than we do them these days for the podcast, but, I figured might as well. So yeah, obviously, based on what I just said, a song that I've liked for a long time.
Yep.
This might be a top 5 Sabaton song. It's probably definitely a top 10 Sabaton song for me. I mean, it's maybe not that strong of a competition, but still. They do have a lot of good songs, though. But, I do quite enjoy this one. I don't think there's much more to say about that. Thoughts?
Great song. I like Sabaton. Like most of their songs, yeah. It's a great song.
See? Isn't this a great episode of the Trash Talk Podcast where we both like each other's songs of the week? Which also brings this episode of the Trash Talk Podcast to a close. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like. If you want to see more episodes like this, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you have something to say, leave a comment or join us with our links in the description below. Sergej.
That's it.
That's it.